We are live. It's the come up. Do 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 do. It's the come up. Ga, 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 ga. It's the come up. I'm so serious. That's gonna keep being the theme song until someone offers to write me a theme song. So if you don't like that song, shoot me a message, shoot me an email, text me. Let me know. Let's collaborate. Let's make a song. Let's make it happen. Hello, I'm Nick Wickham, and this is, as you guessed it, the Come Up. This is your new favorite. It's gonna be super dope. I have a very exciting guest. He is my dear friend and theater worker. His name is Jorge Silva, and he is the managing director of the neo-futurists. I'm super excited about them because I think that they are going to be on the front end of kind of figuring out how we keep making this thing we call theater moving forward in this post-COVID life. And also, Jorge's dope, so I'm excited to just introduce you to him and talk about his life and stuff. So, without further ado, here is my dear friend, Jorge Silva. Hey, friend, how are you?
Oh, hello.
Oh, Murphy's here.
Murphy's here.
We love Murphy. Officer Alex Murphy, to be
Officer Alex
exact.
Murphy. She's now a part of all of my talk show appearances. Uh, Not to mention all my video conferences. So, yeah, she's just here all the time now. So
I
I
mean,
hope
it
you
makes
don't mind
sense.
that she joins us.
I mean, I assume that Murphy is also sheltering in place? Question mark.
Yeah, I mean, very, very much open. He's an agent actually right now.
Jorge, how are you? How's your life? What's happening? What's your COVID life
I'm,
feel like?
it's interesting. I hope it's okay. Murphy's here. I feel like
I'm so
with
happy Murphy's here.
I feel like now that like animals and talk shows have a different life after Tiger King, right? Like I feel like I got sharing an office with you. I felt it was really funny that we ended up together, uh, and that we ended up just being one of the most raucous offices in the building
Of all time,
of all time. Certainly, certainly,
I think we're champions. I think that office needed like a wake up call anyway. So anyway, um,
absolutely.
but Jorge, tell us who you are. What do you do? Why do we know you? Why do we like you?
I don't know why you would like me, but you might know me because I, like as you said, I'm the managing director for the neo-futurists. I've also been in the city for a while, alongside of being a former producer with Goodman. I was also working for the Smithsonian in the DC market, and before that, I was in New York, running around doing a lot of collective creation theater. So, and I'm originally from Chicago. I'm from the South Side, from Bridgeport originally. But then I went away to school, and then I came back a few years ago, and then I jumped right back into the Chicago market.
Nice. So Jorge's really smart. He like I don't know why he still talks to me because I'm not nearly as smart as Jorge, but here we are.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
What?
Don't do that. You're fantastic. You're incredible.
I mean, I didn't say
You're
I was
very smart.
incredible, but you know.
You're very smart. You're very smart.
So, Jorge, I like your perspective on like art and the future of art, especially right now, like thinking about, how do we make work in this post-coronavirus life. And I like I said in the intro, I think that the Neos have kind of been on like the front end of new work in general and kind of like what the theater model looks like. Um, so I'm interested to hear like what you think about moving forward as the American theater. Like, what does that look like, and how does commercial theater fare versus like devised creative theater, or like what do you feel?
I don't think you could ask a harder first question. You're like, you're not using this conversation, and you're just like,
I like
let's
to
fix,
jump in with the topic.
yeah, let's address the entirety of the industry. First thing.
I mean,
Uh,
it's always on my mind. I feel like it's hard to
that's
think about
fair.
anything else right now.
That's fair, and considering that we both met at a nonprofit theater and we continue to be a part of the industry, I feel like it makes sense. It makes sense. No, I think what's really difficult right now is trying to think about what the next step in the nonprofit theater model is. I mean, everyone's been banging that drum for a long, long time that the nonprofit theater model just doesn't work or doesn't work anymore. And as much as that keeps being said and that continues to be a topic of conversation for conferences and for meetings and for now webinars, there hasn't been a lot of solutions as to what the next step actually is. And if that isn't being thought about now, I don't know if it'll ever be thought about, but I think it's clearly showing a lot of the cracks in the nonprofit theater model. Sure. That so many companies have been relying on, for example, large spring fundraisers to raise a third of their total revenue. And because those fundraisers aren't happening, those companies don't have any working capital. And we're going to go into the fall with some big old question marks about what the nature of theater is actually going to be at that point. If there's going to be companies going to be able to produce off the bat, or if that's going to take years in order to see certain companies again. And that's really frightening, only because Chicago theater is an institution on itself, and it's a big part of the fabric that is Chicago. You know, nonprofit theater in Chicago is a jumping off point for Broadway. For so many years, all the shows previewed in Chicago for a reason, because the market here is just so robust. And we'll see, like, if that robustness lasts.
So, as someone that kind of grew up in Chicago, have you seen the model or the way that the theater market shift in any major ways in your time here, or like, and in what ways?
I mean, the thing is, it's kind of hard to say because, you know, I grew up in the city, and being on the South Side, you kind of live in a bubble where there's not a lot of understanding of what happens in the rest of the city, and culturally speaking, you're not really aware. And at least that was my experience in my block and my part of the city. And it wasn't until I got much older that I realized how much there was to do in the city. And because I left the city at such a young age, but and came back a few years ago, I feel like I'm not particularly qualified to make a comment on that. What I can say, though, is from a national point of view, because I was in a different market when I started out in the industry, particularly Latin America was really my first market, and then going to New York, and then DC, and then coming back to Chicago. The thing that I've seen happen is there's been a real interesting popularity with theater, and especially in the mid-Atlantic, where theater blew up in the 2010, like around 2010, and we saw all these different production companies spring up overnight. Saw House of Cards start filming in Baltimore. We saw Veep start filming in Baltimore. We had all these different films that brought all the actors together in this area in this really, really interesting way. The problem was that everybody thought they could make a theater company overnight, and then all those theater companies crashed overnight. And that was happening, as it turns out, simultaneously in a lot of different markets where theater was starting to gain some kind of ground. Yeah. So I think there's a lot more at this point. From a larger perspective, there's a lot more theaters looking at the fact that there is going to be continued competition in the market, and then those who are interested in getting in the market actually taking the time to do some market research before entering.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you've cut your teeth, for lack of a better term, at some pretty large institutions. So I think that going from a Goodman in Chicago and then beginning to work at a Neo's, like, what is that experience like? Do you think it's a different world? Is it similar? How do you approach it?
Oh, yeah. Can I drink some of this water? I see you got some water here in this mug for me. Is that okay?
I didn't mention that Jorge's also a comedian.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no, I sent that water.
I
shipped it to him safely, CDC approved, fully sanitized before it got to your door.
It's such an official talk show. You have mugs of water. There's a green room. I appreciate it. This is really fantastic.
This is not a cheap production.
No, it's not.
The come up is expensive.
It is. It is.
Also, speaking of expensive, like I forgot to. You're in a suit.
Yeah.
You're wearing a tie. You have a jacket on. I'm in the same color I was in last week. Like, I have some stripes to make it exciting.
But you look good. I love stripes on you. You can rock a pattern. You see, and we're on national TV, so I just felt like I had to dress up.
This is international. This is worldwide.
International. See, this is my point. This is exactly my point. Mano, good girl.
Oh,
she does tricks.
So yeah, that transition from Goodman to Neo's. What was that like?
That's right. That's what we're talking about. It was severe. It was incredibly severe. I mean, the thing is that I came back into this market and immediately went into a large nonprofit organization, right? That was a Goodman. And then going to a much, much smaller really changed my thought about how much is actually done on a larger scale in terms of the fact that there's a department for everything at the Goodman. There's a person for every role, and that is incredible to see. And it's great to have had the opportunity to watch all those folks work. And it wasn't until I got to the neo-futurists and I had to become all those people. I had to become our audience development coordinator. I had to be our HR. I had to be our accountant. I had to be our marketing manager, right? And I had a much more profound respect for those people now. But what's also really interesting is the decision-making process is very different, where a large-scale organization still has to deal with what those long-term goals and who actually gets to decide that. And going to the neo-futurists is very different because we're a horizontal power structure. We're a consensus-based model, which means that everybody in the company has a stake in terms of decision-making. And I really, as a managing director, I make the joke that's like, I'm more, yes, thank you, yes, I know you want food. I'm really more like a prime minister to two houses, working with the board to make decisions, but also working with the ensemble to make decisions. And at the end of the day, we're working together to try to make decisions as a whole to see what we need to do institutionally and artistically.
Sure. So, okay, can you talk a little bit about like being a managing producer? I feel like a lot of people, that's just a term that gets thrown around in theaters a lot, but like what does that mean specifically at the Neos and like for your life?
Well, having been a producer at a large organization in other theaters, right? The producing aspect had a lot more to do with trying to develop relationships, connect artists to directors, to casting directors, finding personnel, and managing a very specific budget. And at that point, my realistic that we were hitting on means that I have to find producers alongside me so that the major institutional decisions are being made, that we're following through with paying our taxes, with our payroll, with our documentation, with developing new relationships with the community. Whereas, the art, we're often talking about the art, about where the art lands in terms of our communities, but being at the helm and having a space in Andersonville means that I also have a lot more work to do in terms of making sure that our relationships with our neighbors are holistic, are seen through, and that we're not a plate on the community. Rather, we're supporting the community.
Yeah, because a lot of storefronts in Chicago don't have their own space. So I think the Neos are super unique in that way, and also comes with some interesting challenges.
Totally. I mean, we definitely have a lot more overhead to be concerned about. We have to pay for rent. We have to pay for utilities, obviously. But the good thing is that we can also make decisions for ourselves about what kind of art we want to make and when we want to make it, and also offer our space and our platform to the organizations and to the efforts that we see that fit with our ethos.
Mm-hmm. So, on a quick side note, Jorge is also interesting because he's married to an occupational therapist. Her name's Emily.
I am.
I love her a lot. She's great. I went to your wedding. It was dope. So what?
Yeah, you posted the photo. You posted a photo today, I think, of you dancing.
That's my cover photo.
In the middle.
The cover photo on my Facebook is me at Jorge's wedding. I also would like to point out that that shirt I bought was for the opening of Ella Enchanted, but I was like, the wedding was in the winter. It was like December. When did you get married? I don't remember.
November. It was November. It was the beginning of November.
Counts. November, December, same month. And I was like, I'm going to wear this very spring look to this very winter wedding. And I think it worked out really well.
I think it worked out fantastically. I mean, not only is the color palette fantastic for a fall wedding, right? You looked more Miami Vice than you did like Dia de los Muertos. But it was great.
It was a blast.
I just love seeing that photo just because you're just surrounded by everybody. You're clearly the life of the party, Forget me and Emily. Forget me and Emily.
I don't ask for this life. It was given to me.
Right. You're really Caesar in this. In like when it comes to fun, it is that responsibility is thrust upon you.
So, I mean, what has it been like living with someone in the medical field right now through this current medical crisis?
Um, there's a lot of sobering moments. To be really good, just frank, it has been a few weeks of making really hard decisions where, there's a moment where Emily wasn't on the front lines, and that's what she would say. People would say, "Oh, Emily, you're on the front lines," and she would categorically say, "I'm not on the front lines," because she works in an acute rehabilitation hospital, and now they are accepting COVID patients. And not too long ago, actually last week, we had a scare where we thought for sure she was exposed and this was going to result in her, and she also happened to have a cold at the same time, and so we can only conclude that for that moment that she might have been exposed to COVID-19. And on top of already having, like, for me to take care of my parents, which is a big reason why I moved back to Chicago. I'm an only child, and like my parents are medically complex, and I want to help take care of them. I was also trying to take care of my wife while she was isolated in the apartment. And she's okay. She tested negative, but her hospital is now accepting COVID patients, which means that she's at high risk of exposure, which me being with her means that I'm at high risk of exposure. And though we are likely to be okay at the end of the day, like even if we do get sick, we're like most likely to come out of the other end fairly safely. But my parents and my grandparents who live with my parents, I probably won't be able to see them for a year because we have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And that means me staying as far away from them as possible for as long as possible to make sure that my mother's medically complex isn't exposed and my grandparents who are elderly aren't exposed either.
Yeah.
And that's just another difficult decision that we've had to make. I feel like I've been having to make difficult decisions left and right, trying to take care of the company, about what kind of process we are going to see from the theater company, how we're going to pay everybody. I've been taking care of my students because I also teach at the School of the Art Institute. I've been taking care of my students at Posse Foundation. I've been taking care of my students at Daniel Murphy's. This is starting to sound like me bragging, but
that's why you're here. More.
But I have all these students, and I'm trying to take care of them as well, because the other conversation that I'm having in the art world is this all futile? Like, why make art? Like, I have my students who feel hopeless in this moment, and I keep having to try to remind them that they are documentarians, that no matter what they create, whether it's COVID specific or not, they serve as documentarians. But I also tell them to honor their emotions in the moment, because it's a lot of them are just being forced to create by the fact that they're in school still. And bye, Murph. And
interview over.
Yeah, right. We're done. The star's gone. Bye.
Well, okay, actually, something as an artist myself, like the futile feeling that your students are feeling is something that's kind of in my heart and mind as well. Yep. So you mentioned being a documentarian. Can you speak a little bit more about that and like what that means as an artist? Thank you for that.
Sorry, I just need to. And I love holding a mug with two hands. It's never obnoxious. She's back. Well, it's. I feel. So I know that people process things differently, and I know that there's going to be theater artists who can't create at this moment, no matter what streaming capabilities they have, no matter what kind of facilities are set up. And we are totally not defined by institutions either, right? Like there's also that thing, and I think, but there are those who want to create, and I think that's fantastic, because if we're creating right now, we're translating that emotion, right? The thing that we always say to our students at SASC is that the greatest truth that we see is the authorship in and of itself. And so being able to create in this moment, no matter what it is, whether it's specific to COVID-19 or not, you're translating the moment. And we're going to have a moment where we're going to reflect, that we're going to look back on this moment. And in the same way that we praise dramaturgs for taking the time to contextualize a play, we're going to ask to contextualize this moment through the art, vice versa. So I keep to tell my students to follow through not only what they're required to do, but also to honor what they're feeling, and that the story about a mother and daughter creating a cottage is not necessarily relevant, and that's not a bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. And those authors feel like, who wants to read this right now? There is somebody out there who does. Mm-hmm. There is somebody who does need this, and I can tell you this because the stuff that we've created at the neo-futurists with our online platform, that the TIW goes viral, the Infinite Wrench goes viral. Sorry, I didn't want to abbreviate.
Yeah.
The feedback has proven that this is that even if we're creating, and sometimes it feels like we're creating for ourselves, now we're actually getting to see all these testimonials come back and say, like, this is something that I needed. This is creating routine, and it's brilliant to still feel connected to a community in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So to switch a little bit now to the Neos.
Yeah.
First, I want to
Yes.
you were involved with the Neo-Futurists much before you became the managing producer.
Yes.
What about their work attracted you to wanting to be involved with them when you got back into the Chicago market?
I'm glad you asked that, Nick. I'm really excited to talk about that. No, I love the neo-futurists. I knew about the neo-futurists a long time ago. Again, when I was just beginning to get a feel for what Chicago had to offer in terms of art, and I saw them when I was a kid, and much like a lot of theater artists in Chicago. And when I came back to Chicago, it was a really interesting situation where I went to go see the show again, and realized that I could do that. Like, I pointed at the stage, I was seeing everybody perform, I was having a great time, and realized, oh, that's something that I could do. And I was already in a transitional phase where I was already frustrated with the industry because of the lack of opportunity I was seeing as an actor. I always tell this joke that my agent would always send me out to the things that I can only expect are stereotypes for Latinx folks. Like, I was getting sent out for the vagrant, for the servant, and way too many times for thug. And that's a problem, because nothing about this says thug.
I'm totally the psychologist. I'm the one that comes in and is like, take the cost off of him. I promise. Let me talk to him.
You're the good cop.
Yeah. I'm not a cop. So I'm a therapist.
You're not a cop. You're a therapist. You're there. Sorry, you're right. This is taking a very weird turn. Oh no. Murphy knows. Murphy knows. That's why she's sitting here now, being like, "You messed this up." She's looking at me like so judgmental. Anywho, I came back to Chicago and I was watching the Neo-Futurists, and again, I was in a transitional phase, and it became very clear in that moment that I didn't have to wait for somebody to write a Latinx play that I could finally get casted in. I didn't have to wait for a company to do that. That if I wanted to see the work, I could do that work, and I could also perform that work, and I could direct that work. Because that's what the Neo-Futurists do. Performers are writers and directors. Mm-hmm. And I could be my own vanguard in that way. And so it was fantastic to have that realization and get in touch with that part of myself again where I could start creating. And I initially had contact with the company because I applied for the Artists of Color Scholarship. And that funded my opportunity to take a class. And I stuck around for a second class because I just wanted to creating. And then I was offered an opportunity to be a part of a show. It was the Arrow, which is our live lit essay show. And then I was a designer, and then I was a consultant, and then I became the managing director. And it's kind of beautiful to be ingratiated to a community, an artistic community, before joining. And that was like a very different experience than the Goodman, where I showed up, I started working in the office, and I was learning from there on. As opposed to, I knew the company already, I knew the people there, I knew about the style, and I was very ready to be able to serve in that capacity.
That's awesome. So Can we talk about this new digital platform, the Infinite Wrench goes viral? First, what is the Infinite Wrench? And two, how did we make it viral?
Yeah, so the Infinite Wrench is our flagship show. We perform 50 weeks out of the year, and it's our ever-changing and ongoing attempt to do 30 plays in 60 minutes plus a wrench. And what that means is we have a very specific aesthetic. We're non-illusionary. We always play ourselves on stage. And the idea is to create brief 2-minute plays that are decided in order by an audience. So the audience comes in, they roll a die to decide the ticket price. Then they get a menu, what we call a menu, is just a list of the plays. And then they can yell out to the performers what play they want to see next. And so that means that those 60 minutes are dictated in terms of order by the audience. And they stick to that 60 minutes. So if they get to 60 minutes and they've only done 3 plays, bad night. But if they do all 60 or 30 plays, fantastic. So they're never like Shrek on ice or anything like that, right? They're always themselves. They're always themselves, and that's a part of the aesthetic. It's a very big part of the aesthetic, and so is brevity at that point. And so we've been doing the show for 31 plus years, 50 weeks out of the year, three nights every week, and when we decided to shutter the doors for the safety of our staff, our ensemble, and our audiences, we still felt the impetus that we wanted to see the work continue. We wanted to honor that part of the mission that says that we are ongoing and never changing. And if there's any theater company anywhere that can create a show in a week, it's got to be the neo-futurists, because that's what we do anyways. Mm-hmm. You know, we start rehearsals on a Tuesday and have a show on a Friday. And that's a brand new show. And we always say that if you've seen the show once, you've seen the show exactly once. And so when the opportunity came, and we say it's an opportunity to try to change over the platform, we did exactly what we do best, which is where we came together as a company, made a decision in consensus about how we wanted to proceed with the show, and thus the Infinite Wrench goes viral.
That's amazing. So this wasn't something that you were thinking about before. This was directly related to the COVID situation.
It was directly correlated, yeah. And it's been amazing. I'm so proud of the ensemble. I'm so proud of our staff, and I'm so proud of our board for coming together to make this happen. And it has such a clear structure to it in terms of our online platform that there's a familiarity to it, so that our audiences who are coming in see things that they recognize, which is, again, a nice thing right now. Mm-hmm. And then for those who are just trying us out for the first time, they can see everything laid out for them perfectly, so that there's no learning curve. You get to just come in, be a part of the show, be a part of the experience, and maybe come back the next week.
It's also super affordable, which I think is
very affordable. That's a big part of it. Again, like I said, like the price for the show is determined by a roll of a die. The truth of that is that it's $9 plus a roll of a die, but that means that the lowest price is $10, and we've kept it that way for 10 years because we don't want to increase, because we know that a lot of our audiences are young, and we know that a $35 ticket for nosebleed seats in a big theater is still not something a lot of our audiences can do. Mm-hmm. So affordability is a big part of it, and that's a financial barrier that we can say that we've had broken down for a long time.
That's amazing. So okay, I'm new to neo-futurists. I'm new to Infinite Wrench. I want to know a little bit about this digital platform.
I mean, you're not.
Like, what does it look like?
See,
I'm not.
This is not neo-futurists.
Okay, so I'm not new to the neo-futurists. I love the neo-futurists. Actually, Jorge is the one that was like, "You got to go. You have to go to this show." And I was like, "Okay." We went together, and I was like, "That was amazing. What was that?" And that's why that's why I wanted to talk to you today, because I feel like, you know, there are a lot of conversations and questions right now around, like, how do we move forward as an industry? How do we continue to make theater? And because the Neos are new every week and fresh every week, and literally it was within like the first 2 weeks of the stay-at-home order that it was like, neo-futurists are online now, and it just made sense. So I hear you brought a little something for the people to nibble on.
Yeah. So let's watch a video so you can get a taste of like what that aesthetic, that yum it actually is, and then we could talk a little bit more about the company at large and what we're actually doing. Does that sound like a good idea?
That sounds fantastic.
Fantastic. I'm gonna do this thing where I have to now share my screen.
I know. Listen, y'all. We are trying new things here at the Come Up. Bear with us. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. He's clicking. Do you hear the clicks? Oh, there we go.
Neo Dollhouse Theater presents The Exorcist in 3 parts. Go. Next.
So this is brand new content created by your ensemble.
Brand new content. Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that actually was that particular one was made by Kirsten Reber, our artistic director.
Okay. So, I
Yeah.
mean, talk to me about, about the company as large. Like you said, like your model. How do
Yeah.
you create? Why do you create? And what does that look like?
Well, Nick, I've kind of explained some of that. Thank you very much. But moreover, yeah, we've been doing this for so long. At this point, we're not really that punk rock, just because like at some point you've been around so long that it's not really punk rock. So what we're really doing is trying to just honor the aesthetic, and that's a big part of what we do. And because we do this show 50 weeks out of the year, and because it's different every week, right, and we have such a unique model, we're shielded from a lot of the problems that a lot of nonprofit theater models would otherwise face. And on the flip side, we have our very own unique problems. Mm-hmm. So it was easy for us to be able to switch over to the digital platform in that we could stop the show, and there's so little overhead because we're not building large sets. We're not doing large amounts of rehearsal in order to get to the show, that stopping and just translating is just one step for us creating the digital platform. And I know that whenever we get to the other side of this and we get to have shows in our space again, we'll be able to pick up like that, because of the fact that, again, we have so little overhead, we know the routine, we know what the show looks like, and we can just execute. And our ensemble is a fantastically talented crew of writers and performers, that the constraint of being online is just like any other constraint that we get from being in a space, in a different theater, different venue, part of a festival, et cetera, et cetera. And thus why we're seeing what is now really neo-futurist film, because before, on the first week, we had plays that were being adapted for film. And now, because so much is just being made at home and in quarantine, these is its own, now they're just being created as films, and now that's its own aesthetic as well. So it's been interesting and evolving. We're still learning. We're certainly still learning.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned it a couple times, and something that I also appreciate about the Neos is the use of your ensemble, and that word meaning more than person attached to theater. So, what do you think is like the difference or the value in your ensemble at Neos versus the like ensemble at whole, like, or artistic associates or whatever people want to call them?
There's just a lot of responsibility with being an ensemble member at the neo-futurists. There is no get a title and then walk away for years on end, right, and come back for a particular production. The ensemble is a decision-making body when it comes to what we do institutionally, right? So again, my role as a managing director really is to set up the goalposts and say, this is what we need to accomplish, or this is what we can do. And the artistic decision-making lands firmly in the ensemble, and our artistic director does a lot of work in terms of trying to facilitate those conversations and be the champion for the desires of our ensemble. And so it's not like me and Kirsten sit in a room and decide this is what the neo-futurists are going to do. Mm-hmm. That doesn't exist for us. It's us coming together, making proposals, and saying yes after everybody has said yes. And consensus means that we have to be fairly unanimous.
Do you think that leaning on your ensemble truly as artists and decision makers do you think that this model is kind of going to be something that we see a lot more in the American theater, or like how do you think people are going to shift? Do you think people will shift? What do you think?
I mean, I hope so, and I say that because I think a big part of the way the nonprofit theater model is right now is it's based on this top-down hierarchy, right? Hierarchy is a big part of the way the nonprofit theater model works, right? There's this idea that the artistic director is at the very, very top, and then everybody else follows, right? And, it's not to say that model can't work, but I think that a lot of the issues that we're seeing with the nonprofit theater model are correlated to that. And what I mean by that is like the kind of inequity that can exist, and the decision-making power that lands solely on a small group of people that is not cognizant of the community that it affects. Mm-hmm. And by having so much of that power consolidated in upper echelons, we're not going to see the theater evolve, because there's a lot of it is just based on weathering the storm the way they've always weathered the storm. And with a decision-making body that's horizontal, we're really taking into account any kind of potentials that we might face down the line, right? And so any issue that an ensemble member faces with a company is an issue for the entirety of the company. And there's no underling in that regard.
Yeah. So excited. I just love it. I think it's really good to have these conversations and talk about like what's next, because I think that a lot of like people can't really see through the forest for the trees right now. And I'm inspired by the shift and the pivot that Neos have been able to take, and I'm really hoping that folks are able to figure out how that works for their model specifically. Like, no one can do what the Neos do. So I don't think that will ever happen, but I think that there are some pieces that people can learn from the work that you're making.
I mean, I hope that there is actually that people can do what the Neos do, because I think neo-futurism is for everybody, and I think that's one of the biggest appeals that I saw when I came back to Chicago, is that everybody can do neo-futurism, because at the base of it is people telling their own stories.
Oof, that was such a managing director response. That was good.
Do I win? Is this how this works? Have I won this conversation?
Well, you might win, but I don't know. I kind of want one more video. Like, can we learn something else?
Absolutely.
From you? Like, yeah,
absolutely. So I don't know if you're gonna learn something else, but like I do have another video. It's one of our another ensemble member in the same class as Kirsten by Trevor Dawkins. Here it is. I won't say any more.
Oh, great. I'm excited. It's coming. I feel as if so many of us can relate to that right now. But something else that I love about the Neos is that there's this idea or concept of polish that comes with a lot of theater and art nowadays, and I feel like that's never a conversation when the Neos are making their work, because that's not what really is what it's about.
No, we don't have time. We come together on a Tuesday to rehearse. The show's got to go up on Friday. And there's no other rehearsal. There's just there's pitch, rehearsal, Friday we come in, we do the show. And I think that's what makes the brevity possible, is that we're not getting caught up in the preciousness of all of it. It's just do the damn thing.
Do the damn thing. Jorge, thanks for being here today. Before
Thank
I let you
for
go,
having me.
I do want to say one of my favorite things when we shared an office together was that Jorge, I don't know if you can tell by the mic that he has in front of him, but Jorge is a decorated voiceover performer.
Not decorated.
And so one day
decorated.
he was like, "Nick, I have to do a voiceover. Can you just be quiet and I'm gonna close the door?" I was like, "Yeah, no worries." And then I heard him do something that I thought was absolutely hilarious. I'm gonna make you do it right now. Can you do it right now?
Well, so what you're referencing is the fact that I would have to do commercials in Spanish. And the problem is, when you do commercials in Spanish, is that because they're in an American market, the pronouns stay the same, or not the pronouns, the nouns stay the same, right? The proper nouns stay the same, right? So names stay the same, especially brand names stay the same for recognizability. So I'll be doing Spanish, and then all of a sudden I'll just drop off into like a real hardcore English word that's really recognizable, and I think that's what was getting you. But I'll give you an example. If I'll start with something very simple, like si estás pasando un buen momento, supéralo con el sabor único de una blue moon.
Such a good voice. It was great, and that's what it sounds.
And
I think
they sound.
I feel like the one that I
Because
heard.
they'll just go. They'll go like TurboTax.
Well, I think the one that I heard was Western Bacon Cheeseburger, and it absolutely changed my life. So thank you for that moment. Thank you for being here. Thanks for chatting about the Neos, everyone. How do I follow the Neos? How do I subscribe?
So you can go to our website at neo-futurists.org, and you can find all of our information there. But if you don't even want to bother with that, you could just go to Patreon and look up Neo-Futurists, and we're there. We have tiers of all kinds, so whatever your financial situation, you can totally take advantage and be a part of the show.
Yeah, I also posted the links on the Facebook Live and the YouTube, so go ahead and follow there. Thank you, Jorge. You're awesome. See, this wasn't too bad, was it?
Thank you. No, it was great. This was fantastic.
Yeah.
How did I do? Did I do good?
You did great. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I'm so proud of you.
Only children unite.
Fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Just trying to provide life to people. Thank you, my friend. So thank you all for being here. Next week on the Come Up, I'm super excited. My friend Goldfield Berry from Omaha. She is a playwright, and she is currently at home working on her art and also living with 3 children under the age of 10 in the COVID-19 world. So I'm excited to talk to her about that. If you like what you saw today, subscribe on YouTube, share it on Facebook. Tell me your feels. Tell me what went well. Tell me what didn't. I just want to hear from you. I think this is super exciting. We're just going to keep this going. So thank y'all for being here. Look to the new future like Jorge does with the neo-futurists. I appreciate you. You all have a wonderful night. Goodbye. Goodbye. Farewell. Yeah.